Hi, thank you for joining us today. My name's Andrew Maguire, Product Marketing from VMRay. And joining me is Ben Abbott. He's one of our TFO, Technical Field Operations guy. He's going to do the technical deep dive and give you a quick demo of the solution. So that we don't waste any more time, we're just going to jump straight in. There's this old saying, liars, damn liars, and statisticians. But when it comes to phishing attacks, there's a lot of consensus, especially when it comes to the numbers. Email continues to be the most successful attack vector, both the spray and pray type attacks, as well as the more targeted surgical attacks. So the numbers are around about 90 to 94% of successful breaches are due to phishing attacks, at least as the initial deployment of the malware. A lot of the malware now and a lot of these phishing attacks have become very, very sophisticated, and they are engineered really to avoid detection. And there are lots of tools out there like Nfish and Zfisher, where you can actually set up sites literally within about 5 minutes. They have their own tunneling, and they become very, very hard to detect. So one of those payloads that, other than things like credential harvesting, one of the payloads that really drives fear into a lot of IT administrators and SOC analysts is ransomware. And ransomware as a service has become a lot more popular. If everybody's familiar with how ransomware works, just so we get on the same page, you have a platform operator, and then you have the affiliates, which are the hackers. And the platform operator sells the service to the hackers, and typically there is a revenue share once a successful ransom has been captured, somewhere around the region of 10 to 20%. So Black Cat is one of these ransomware as a service that has been around since about November 2021. The interesting thing about it is it's written in Rust. So there's probably about 4 or 5 malware families out there that use Rust. So we're starting to see a lot more of Rust in the wild. The thing with Rust is that it allows you to deploy both on Windows and Linux. So they're doing privilege escalation, that sort of thing. But typically, once they get in, they're being deployed by Cobalt Strike or malware loaders such as Bumblebee, Emotet, TrickBot. And it's really sort of they started doing this double extortion play where not only are they encrypting the endpoints, but they're also exfiltrating the data prior to encryption. And that's where the double extortion comes in. If you don't pay the ransom, you're not going to have your endpoints decrypted. And then they're also threatening to sell that data. And then there is a third extortion play, which is if the ransom doesn't get paid, then they start DDoSing the victim's infrastructure. So the malware attacks are becoming more and more sophisticated. In the case of Black Cat, it uses an access token. So you can do very, very targeted attacks. And the reason why they're using access tokens is so that the malware typically can't be analyzed in a research environment or in a sandbox. So that access token has to be there for it to deploy the payload. The other thing that we're seeing is that it's not only encrypting in AES 256, they're also encrypting in CHAR-CHAR20, which is used in other ransomware such as Rashida. So one of the interesting things that has happened over the last couple of months, beginning of November 2023, we started seeing an uptick in attacks on healthcare. And there are a number of healthcare organizations that have been really crippled by some of these attacks. One instance was the United Health Groups. They had an attack on Charter Healthcare, which is one of their subsidiaries. And Charter Healthcare has what they call the Opus division, and it's a payment processing service. And that links all of the doctors, the physicians' offices, and that's how the payments are made for pharmaceuticals, for example. And so a lot of patients have been affected by it. In the end, what happened, and it's kind of interesting, the ransomware was paid, and I think it was something like 22 million in Bitcoin. But unfortunately for the affiliates, the operator of the platform decided to infiltrate the wallets, remove the Bitcoin, and then shut down the servers. And unfortunately, then the affiliates, even though the ransomware had been paid, were unable to get the decryption keys to that data. And really, that sort of left the victim out in the wind. So something like 68,000 physicians' offices, and it really is, it's a sort of a global effect. You have military organizations that are also using this payment platform around the world. And so it's been a really tough time for United Health. We have all these point solutions already deployed. Phishing emails are still bypassing them. They're finding lots of ways to be able to bypass the solutions, even investing in those solutions so they could figure out the best way to get around them. And one of the challenges is that, yes, the point solutions and the endpoint solutions probably pick up 95, 98% of these phishing emails, but it's always that 1% that if they do get through and they are clicked on, it could potentially bring down the whole organization. So the only way really to identify an email that has bypassed that point solution is to do things like educate your users. Educate your users. There are lots of programs out there. I can give you some examples in a minute on identifying these phishing emails, and then having a third-party solution that you could send it to be able to identify whether it really is malicious or not. Obviously, that's if you're doing it manually, that's a lot of work on the SOC team. And so we have a solution where end users can automatically send the emails to the sandbox and get a result back pretty quickly without any interaction with the SOC team. So the other thing now is that a lot of the malware are doing checks to identify whether they're in a sandbox or a research environment, and we call them anti-sandbox evasion checks. If a piece of malware in, say, a hooking-based sandbox detects one of these checks, it shuts down, hibernates, and doesn't deploy the payload. And that's because they want to protect the IP. They want to protect that payload because they've invested a lot of time and energy into developing that. That's why a hypervisor-based sandbox is really important, because there's nothing to be able to detect within that destination environment. By educating your end users on phishing, you're actually adding to the detection fabric of the network, right? They basically become a human firewall element. And the human analysis is always going to be, at this point, better than machine learning or AI-driven analysis to report a phishing email and save the entire organization. So there are different levels of success and failure when it comes to the different types of phish. So links, attachments, and credential harvesting are the three main ones. Credential harvesting is the less successful because there is a second or third stage where the user can question whether that really is a request for their credentials or not. So phishing simulators are useful to be able to identify that 20% that do most of the bad clicks, and you can do programs and implement programs to improve their awareness and help protect the rest of the organization. Over to you, Ben.
Thanks, Andrew. So there's a number of ways that different organizations can automate looking into these user-reported phishing emails, and a lot of security automation, orchestration, or SOAR tools, and even kind of tip tools that are kind of blending these kind of tools together, have something built in that can extract out the various components of that email and then submit them to whatever playbook or however they phrase those within however you want to set that up. And so with VMRay, we have a a lot of different integrations with these different tools, whether it's XOR or Splunkzor, just for some of the popular ones, even things like Tines, for instance, that we have integrations with. And for any of those components that are extracted out of the email, those can then be detonated, whether a tool like VMRay, to be able to determine if those URLs or attachments are malicious. So we can really automate that whole process, not just the submission of those different files, but also pulling back the results from the analysis into the SOR technology. And then you can have other orchestrations to that, whether it's blocking the email sender, whatever else you need to do as part of that playbook. What we also have tied into the tool itself is what we call our IR mailbox, or the sort of the instant response mailbox. And this is very similar to what you have, like a phishing mailbox that you have built in. You can have users that can submit suspicious files directly into it. And really, there's different ways that companies that use our platform and use this technology will leverage this. Some will open up to their user base so that any of their flagged emails can be submitted here. We can look into each of those to determine if those are malicious, and then give information back to the user and also the security team that's organizing it. Also, you'd be able to set it up, maybe you just want the security team, maybe the users flag it that goes to the security team, and your team wants to look into it. But instead of extracting out the components of the email and then sending it to VMRay, they can easily just forward that email themselves to get that information over. And so you're able to then get any of the details for this. We're able to unpack that email directly and look at whether the attachments, URLs extracted ourselves, and then goes through our various analysis within this to see if the reputation, static, dynamic analysis we have for this. Now, there's a lot of different technologies that we tie into this. So it's not just looking at the attachments and URLs themselves, but there's a lot of pieces that go into both the static and dynamic analysis for these for this. So looking at just deep content extraction, being able to extract out the various components of that email, but also various archive unpacking that might need to happen, and there might be different levels of archives that are submitted as part of that attachment they're able to see, and also even decrypting password protected samples from there. And I'll go over later again how we do that, but there's also just to be able to decrypt any password protected samples from there. We also have computer vision as part of this to extract the text from the images using OCR. So this is used in a lot of social engineering techniques, trying to get people typically we'd see that trying to people to enable macros on Excel or Word, whatever it may be that they're looking to use to actually then run once that's enabled. We also have a smart link detonation for these. So this is especially if you have like spam emails that have a ton of URLs inside of them. What we actually do as part of this is to look to see which of those URLs that might be best to detonate. So you're spending a lot of time analyzing every single URL inside of that email, but just focusing on the ones that might have the most results. And so we look for things like the domain age, a reputation score, if there's an abnormal URL string, if there's maybe there's things like an email address inside of the URL, anything like that we're able to determine if it should be detonated based off those. Or like if it's a hosting site, for instance, so it's not, even if it's the domain age is old because it's a file sharing site, this is something that we'll be able to detonate from there because it's something we might have a file, or typically there's also links on there that eventually then get to the credential harvesting site. Again, for the password protected file analysis, so part of what we do, just if you're submitting this even just directly from VMRay, just any password protected samples, we have a series of guesses that are common for malware analysts. So this would be infected, malware, those type of passwords. But in addition to that, we also search within the email body for the password within this. So, and if you're submitting just the email directly, we also are able to look in the body and subject of that email to test test keywords to see if those will also open up that file. We also have adaptive browser simulation. So this allows us to find the links or buttons within that page that maybe get to again, the next stage of that attack. And so you're able to then look to see, for instance, if it goes to, again, the credential harvesting site, if it or goes to the malware download, anything that will trigger that particular aspect within that simulation there. And the last couple pieces here before I get into some of the demonstration, we also have machine learning that's tied into some of the phishing detection that we have within the site itself. So whether looking at some of the heuristics on those pages, and there's two different engines that we have for machine learning to help determine if that's a phishing site based off those detections. We also automate user interaction. So beyond just the browser simulation, also if it's looking to various clicks within the platform itself, or if it's downloading a file and then that needs clicks and user interaction to get through the next stage of it, we're able to track all the stages of the malware and be able to see all the behavior of this. And then also something that we added relatively recently, and then we're actually expanding the QR code detection here. So not just within the body of the emails, we're able to look at the QR code and extract the URL out of that to detonate it, and that will be part of that smart link detonation as well if it sees that it's a QR code that's mentioned that. But also actually this upcoming Saturday, we're having a release, and part of that will be QR code detection out of PDF files themselves, as we adapt those to what we're seeing within the wild for different attackers. All right, so now I'll get into the live demonstration. So for this, just starting out, so obviously you have a dashboard here, just your typical dashboard you're logging into VMRay. There's also an automation dashboard where you can look at some of the pieces that we see from IR Mailbox itself. So whether, and if you want to configure this, you'll see all the detections from here. This also is where you can go to deploy the Outlook plugin, but we'll go to configure that the IR Mailbox here for right now. And so what we're seeing for this, we have a couple different mailboxes that we can see from this, and we can go in and actually edit these, or we can create our own, another mailbox that we have from there. So some of these you want to create a name for it. You also have an allow list for the domains that you want to allow to submit to this particular mailbox. So whether it's just you want people within your own organization to submit this, or maybe you're an MSSP and you want to open up to your user base, but maybe you want an IR mailbox for each customer that you have within there. So this way you can make sure that it's only for each IR, the allow list is only for that particular user, and so you can name these accordingly, and so you can organize all of that for your customers. You also have other settings within here for confirmation for that sender, so that they get notified that they confirm that actually when they do submit the email to this mailbox that they get confirmation that that's being looked at. You can also notify them once that is completed. So once that analysis is completed, so anytime, or maybe you just want them to be notified when it's found to be malicious, so they know to remove that email or spam or anything else that may need to be done on your end. You also have a discard envelope. So if you are using some kind of forwarding, so whether it is the Outlook add-in that we have, or it could be an Outlook add-in that you're leveraging for another tool that's then forwarding this email over. This way you can just discard that outer envelope. So we're just looking at that email that's attached. That's part of that plugin. Also, if you're worried about quota usage, if just in terms of the overall tool, there is a quota limit that you can set for this. So you can specify a limit for what you have from there for how much you want users to be submitting for this particular sample. Then we also have different analyses. So I would say for the most part, you can usually leave the default settings for these. The one thing you may want to adjust is this triaging that you see here. So this can actually stop the analysis before it gets to the dynamic analysis, depending on some of the findings there. So fully enabled, that will actually do both if it's benign and malicious. So it'll actually stop that. But maybe you just want just the benign ones to be stopped. So this, again, leverages the reputation static analysis to see if the sample is already known to be malicious or benign, based off those details, and it helps speed up the analysis if you do this. So again, maybe depending on your particular use case, maybe you just want this fully enabled because you're just getting information to the user as fast as possible if they already know it to be malicious. But also maybe you want to kind of blow up that sample further and get IOCs and threat intelligence out of that sample. So maybe even if it is already known to be malicious, you don't want to triage it out. So you're still seeing all those aspects here. Again, the link detonation. So you can set smart here. This link detonation is set both for emails and documents. So again, both for the documents or attachments outside of that, or just the emails. Maybe you want to change this up, how this is being done here. So maybe you have so maybe you want to, let's say emails you leave as smart, but maybe documents you want fully enabled. So this way you're able to maybe everything that's embedded within the document, any URLs in the document, you can submit those. You also have caching. And what's nice here is that it's not just the URLs or files inside it, but if you have similar emails, so if there's a malware campaign and multiple users are submitting the same email, or really it is in all intents and purposes the same email, instead of actually reanalyzing those emails separately every single time, what we'll actually do is combine all those and say that these are all similar to each other. So again, it helps speed up the overall analysis. So it's the first time it analyzed, and then every subsequent submission of that, it can use the previous result of this. And so that's how you can set those up. I do also have just an example just to kind of show you. Obviously, you don't necessarily need to scan the QR code here, and I wouldn't recommend that in general. But here it's just an ICAR test sample. So all it's doing here just to demonstrate that particular aspect of this. So what you'll see come in, whether it's the automation dashboard or the main dashboard, you'll see that particular summation come in from there, and then we'll be able to look to see some of the details that we have for that. So whether, if we go to my submissions or all submissions for this, and then we can see that test email, and we can see that come in from this. Now, here, just to kind of pull up an example, this is just what, for this particular one, that an email is received and is currently being analyzed. So this is just as a user, what you would receive or what any user would receive just as that email is being sent from there. So you can see those details from there, anything you may need. And then once that's completed, they'll also get information about that. So really at this point, all you're seeing is just the test email information from there. If I just refresh this, there'll likely be more information on this. And you can already see information pulled out of it. So it's still being scanned, but the static analysis for this is completed. But we still see that it's running because not all and we see the embedded URL. So the QR code was pulled out and the reputation is malicious of that. So that's why it's being submitted. So we see all of this here already being done within seconds. That it should have, even if I had done a triaging this completely, it would have stopped the analysis. It would actually be done already, saying that it was malicious. I already get that notification. And so you see for any of the emails that you submit, you have the static analysis, and then you have child samples pulled out of that. So you have the embedded URL. If there was any attachments, we also have here. And I did actually just get that confirmation is malicious. So again, as a user, this is just what you see from here. So you have information on the sender, the subject, and then it's deemed to be malicious. So, and it's telling to consult IT team. So this is, and as just the user, that's kind of that's all you're getting. So you're not getting really the user doesn't need that much information. But as a VMRay user, you actually can set additional details from there. So in your profile, you can set your own notification settings for the IR mailbox. And so this, again, you can have, say, anytime that someone submitted this or a malicious or suspicious verdict or just a malicious verdict, and this will give you more details than would just be provided to the user. So you can go into that sample that we just had. So again, we can go into that overall sample verdict here and look at those details. So we can go into, again, whether it's the QR code, extraction here. So we can look at the URL for this and see information for out of that. We also have, and similar, if there was an attachment, again, very similar, it's just a different particular file. So we have the static and then static analysis, any embedded URL in that email or that attachment, you're able to extract out from there. Now, maybe for a more interesting sample, I'll just go over an actual phishing URL, just because that will go into a bit more detail than just like the ICAR test sample, just for safety purposes. That's why I was demonstrating here. But as you can see from this page, you can see screenshots from that analysis for a URL. So we're able to see, pretty obvious, probably everyone here, that there's a credential harvesting site. But what's nice with VMRay, again, we're able to detect this automatically. And you can see there's a number of different detections for this. So it's not just kind of at a basic level, it's not just looking at reputation, although reputation is certainly helpful, especially if the site's already down, to already know if it's malicious. Again, we have even AV detections based off some of the web response data, same with some of the YAR, even the YAR rule matches on the web response data. So there's a lot of just known malicious content that we can get out of these to be able to quickly determine if it's malicious without even some of the heuristic matching that you also see here. But you do, in addition to that, you have the heuristic pages, information that you can get from the page itself, so that we see that kind of at a very kind of low level, we just see that it's a login page. So we see that the title and that there's a login form. So just going back to it, even just we can see that it's asking for a login, that there's a place to input or whether it's a password or an email address. We're able to see that's a login form, just at a very basic level for this. We also see information for that, and more specifically, that we see it's a Microsoft login form and that it contains Microsoft copyright text. Again, so we can see that at very least is that likely pretending to be Microsoft, and there's a number of other heuristics for temporary hosting sites, domain valid SSL certificate. So a number of areas where, again, we kind of have at their own, there might be suspicious, or even just maybe not even suspicious from there, some of the lower level ones. But there's a few different aggregate results from that. One is we just have, again, one of our VTIs for this is that there's a number of different, combination of other detections where it determines to be a phishing site and likely and pretending to be Microsoft from there. We also have that from the machine learning. So one of those engines to be able to detect that it's a phishing site just based off here, and we have that classification from this. So you get, again, a lot of details from here, just based off that information, and then we have all those anything we want from there. But also you have things like IOCs if you're looking to extract more data out of this, just as the maybe as the SOC team, and again, really filter out maybe what might be important to pull out of here. Or we can also look at the different behavior analysis. So we have new tabs, any redirects, so we can actually track what maybe just as a user beyond just the screenshots, what they might be seeing from here. So there's a lot of details that we're able to get out of this that's relevant just on as the SOC team. And again, this is all automated. So you don't need to, as you saw from just my quick test, it can be in a matter of seconds that this can be completed. And obviously that could depend on the number of analyses that might need to be running from there, but it can be done very quickly to help sift through these, or the SOC team themselves doesn't have to go through this, so they can just look at the result and be confident especially when something's found to be malicious here, that it is based off all these results. All right. So before I get to some of the questions, I just also want to go over, just again, we do have some documentation on this. So if you have more information, both to use it, we have a cloud, or actually just to set this up, the Cloud Account Manager guide that will go into creating that IR mailbox, or can quickly set that up. It's very easy, just show you, and goes through all the various information that we went over today. We also, at the user reference side, do also have information for actually submitting or using this for the IR mailbox, or just as a kind of an end user, if you're interested in more information on using it, you have the information there. The last thing I also want to cover, and maybe you already have a SOAR platform, instead of the IR mailbox, And what you're doing is you're setting up an API key. Pretty simple. You're just creating an API key. Very similar settings that you have here, but you can have an automation category is the main thing you may want to adjust. So maybe it's like a SOAR or a tip that they're tying this into. And again, you have some of the same settings that we saw earlier. So you can also set those up for anything submitted here.
Great, thanks, Ben. So one point is, you know, I mentioned all these point solutions, such as maybe Proofpoint or Mimecast. They're processing, you know, literally thousands and thousands of emails. One of the challenges, I think, is the recursiveness, how deep that malware can be, which is potentially why they could be missing some of these.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, part of, again, there's there, especially with even it's a URL inside of an attachment. Sometimes that's something that can be missed by those particular tools because they're really scanning as people are selecting those URLs. They don't have the, you know, they're not looking at every single URL to see if it's unless it's already known. So if it's not already known, then it'll open up and then it'll scan after the user's clicked on it. So that especially it might get through, and then you have the user maybe flagging it, and then that's luckily that they can flag something like that, and then from there it's up to whether it's the SOC team to investigate, or if they're using a tool like ours, they can do that automatically.
And I think the attack chains are getting more and more complex. So that's the other challenge, right?
Right. Yeah, definitely. I mean, again, there's you see where it's just maybe it's just like initially it's just a document that has a URL inside of it. That URL then goes to you know, a download page, and maybe it's even maybe that download isn't necessarily the malicious file. It goes to, maybe it's another document with a file, the URL inside of it, and maybe that either goes to the malicious download, or maybe it's a credential harvesting site. Really, there's a lot of different steps for these that we're able to get to that maybe other tools aren't able to, just based off their very initial analysis they may have for this.
Right. So did you want to jump to Q&A?
Yes. So, John, your question around the interactions for CAPTCHA, and for like the fake CAPTCHA sites, definitely. So obviously it's not going to be clicking on like which image, let's say it's like a crosswalk, for instance. It's not going to be able to get through that. We do have user interaction, so you can actually submit these URLs yourself and do a live interaction. So that's one way if you do get to that and you're curious what the stage after that. But if it is just like the checkbox, you know, are prove you're not a computer, and it's just something as simple as that, yeah, we're able to get past that. Yeah, and then John, for your other question, for the payload is known, well, just, you know, a known C2, or, you know, a remote access Trojan, or really just any known malware. Yes, we definitely have ability to do extraction of configs. So if we typically what you'll see, and you'll see this on, obviously it wouldn't be like a URL sample that you see this on, but for the actual file download itself, what you'll see, there a YAR rule hit on that particular sample. And if it's one of the ones that we do have a malware configuration for, which I think at this point is maybe over 20 that we have for malware families, then that will extract out the configuration of that, and those will be added to the IOC. So any component that we're able to extract out from there, we're able to see that from there. All right, and then the last question here, just, you know, how is it better than VirusTotal or any run? Really just, and I'll just kind of open this up to really how is it better than any of the, whether it's a sandboxing tool or any type of malware analysis tool. The main thing that separates us from any other tool like this is the method that we have to set up and monitor the sandbox. So that's the main thing that separates us from pretty much every other tool out there, is that we are, as Andrew kind of briefly mentioned in his portion, but we are monitoring from the hypervisor layer. So this allows us to set up the environment without anything additional to detect with inside of it, but also there's nothing that can be circumvented, which we're seeing a lot more, where just people or authors are writing to do indirect system calls, and it's a way to get past these type of hooking-based sandboxes. Obviously, if something's already known, whether it's a reputation or an antivirus, that likely VirusTotal will have some scans for that. Any run will have information that even like something like a free tool like Hybrid might have information on it, because they can rely on some of those reputation sources. But the main thing that's going to separate us is that dynamic analysis for anything that isn't known. So especially if it's a 0-day, or even if it's just doing some anything that's not triggering these just off the sample itself for those analyses, we're able to get information just based off the behavior that other tools might not.
Great. I think that's all the questions, Ben. So I'd just like to thank you for joining us today. I hope we've given you some valuable information and a little more insight into why user-reported phishing is important. Thanks very much, and we will see you next time.